And good day. Thank you for joining us. I am Tamara Scott. It is Wednesday. Nothing like getting a little wiser each week when you join us on Wednesday. I am pleased to tell you we have Jane Robbins joining us from American Principles Project. Jane Robbins will be joining us, and she's busy, I think, at her own state capitol, actively working to save our children, protect our futures, and our privacy today. So we'll be talking to her, and also Liske Hudson is joining us. If you don't know that name, there's a video going around about a fifth grade boy that just gives a tremendous testimony in an Arizona hearing. Well, if you'll also watch before he speaks, there's a woman that just is so articulate, and I was so impressed by her ability to one, understand the Common Core, the testing, the privacy issues, and I started kind of plugging in, and one of our previous guests, Brad McQueen from Arizona, was kind enough to help me connect with Liske Hudson, who's an attorney and has a great handle on the Common Core and the testing consortiums and the loss of privacy. So we'll be talking to her as well about that opt-out issue. Here in Iowa, we have parents telling us that they are being told by the Department of Education that they cannot opt their children out. Now just listen to that. Your school, any school, I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's a daycare. I don't care if it's anything but boot camp. For them to tell you you cannot opt your child out. Whose child is it? And what happened to this country that you no longer are the sole parental authority in that child's life? And then at the end of the hour, joining us at 10:45 is Kurt Liske. If I'm saying his name correctly, he's with the Iowa Firearms Coalition, and they've have activities happening at the State House. And no matter how you feel about the bill that they're working on, you should be concerned about the fact that everything in the State House seems to be held up by one person. And frustrating enough for those of us on the conservative side that we don't have that same person in the counterpart in the House. But good bills, day after day, make it through 6 committees, through a subcommittee, a committee, a House chamber, make it through the subcommittee, a committee in the Senate, and never see the light of day on the Senate floor. So we'll be talking a little bit with Kurt about that. So right now we're going to go with Jane Robbins, and thank you for staying tuned with us. Our mission on this show is to help you live God's word in today's world and to give you news that you can use because a lot of the other mainstream media they're more about entertainment industry and telling you what the stars are up to and political agendas than actually just getting truth out there that you can use. So Jane is with us. Jane, thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me, Tamara. It's good to be with you.
Always a pleasure when you drop in and give us some of your expertise. Are you at your state capitol today?
I will be. I actually found out that the hearing I have to go to is not till this afternoon, so I'm home right now, but I'll be heading down there in a while.
And tell our folks where's home for you? What state?
Georgia.
All right, so you are in Georgia. And so what bill is it you guys are working on?
Well, we're working on a couple of bills. One is actually a joint resolution that would address the College Board's new leftist AP U.S. history course. And we've been successful. We've gotten a resolution opposed to this and demanding that the College Board return to its traditional course and also instructing our State Department of Education to explore alternatives to the College Board's monopoly in this area. And that has gone through the Senate. It's now in the House, and yesterday it passed a House subcommittee. So it goes to the full committee today, and we're hoping to get it on the floor soon. The session ends next week, but I'm optimistic about that. And the other bill that we're working on is a Religious Freedom Restoration Act, which has passed the Senate and is now in the House. And I sympathize with what you were saying about having one person who holds things up. Well, that's the way we are in the House. And everybody in the House may want it except for this one person, and if he doesn't want it, it dies. So that's what we're dealing with. But those are our two primary pieces of legislation.
All right. And if our viewers or listeners want to copy that or see it, or is there a legislative website, or can they see it at American Principles Project?
They could go to the Georgia Legislature website if you just plug in Georgia Legislature, and that'll come up. And then the resolution is SR 80, and so they can pull it up. Actually, the one that's online is slightly different from the one that's being debated now, although it's not different in any substantive way. It's just a few tweaks later on, but that the resolution is SR 80, and it's at the Georgia Legislature website.
All right, thank you. For those of our listeners who may not know, Jane was very instrumental in helping. She drafted the one that I was able to take to the RNC, the resolution on the AP Advanced Placement History exam, and that passed unanimously through the RNC, and we thank you for that, Jane. And I know other counties and states across the country have been passing that resolution as well, so I really appreciate your expertise there. The reason I wanted you to come on today was the article you wrote on Breitbart about someone spying on our kids. Now, really seriously, Jane, if we thought anybody was stalking our children, we would have a fit, I would hope. It would just we would feel so violated. Talk to us about this.
Well, what happened was, and I assume this is happening all over the country, but what happened was in New Jersey, they're giving the new Common Core Aligned test. New Jersey is in the PARC consortium, which is different from Iowa, but the PARC test is being given for the first time this spring, and they have a contract with Pearson, which is this mega education publisher based out of England that has the contract to administer all of these PARC tests. And PARC, to try to keep from complicating things too much, but PARC apparently has a contract with a test security company that trolls the Internet. And what that means is this test security company just monitors everything on the Internet to see if there are any postings, either on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, that reference any questions on this test. And the idea is that you stop people from putting what should be secure information on the Internet. Well, what happened was this test security company found that there was a Twitter post from somewhere in New Jersey that referenced a question. It didn't really tell what the question was, as it turned out, but it did use some of the words on the question. And so the test security company contacted PARC, the testing consortium, which then contacted the New Jersey State Board or the New Jersey Department of Education. And somehow in all of this, they figured out what student it was. I guess they had the information about students' names and schools and what schools were giving the test on a particular day. So they tracked down this particular student, and they contacted the superintendent in the district in which that school is placed, and with the idea that the superintendent then would contact the school and they would discipline the student. And what happened was the student took down the Twitter post, but it is really just sort of stunning to think that these private companies out there, the test security company and Pearson, which is not even an American company, it's a British company, that they have access to enough individual student information that they can track down a particular social media post and report it to someone who can then take action against that student. I think that is very troubling.
Okay. I just don't think we can comprehend what's really happening there. They're zeroing in on our kids. As we're dealing with an anti-bullying bill at our own state house, which would ask teachers to go in and troll or stalk our children for things that they find offensive, it's even more offensive to me to have, as you say, a country from out of this, someone from out of this country stalking our kids, and then, as I said in my promo for this show, tattling on them with their school district in hopes that they get punished. First off,
that is pretty much what happened, and PARC has defended itself, and Pearson both, saying, "Well, we have to be cognizant of test security and that kind of thing." But it at what point is too far too far, especially when you consider that now these companies and this testing consortium. They have it in their files that this student by name and by school and what he said or what he didn't say or whatever, and presumably that's their information now. And I don't know that there's any way for the parents to get that erased. Plus, the testing consortium, both of the two testing consortia that are connected with the Common Core, have memoranda of understanding with the U.S. Department of Education that any data they get from the testing is made available to the U.S. Department of Education. So presumably this kid's name and what happened here could be made available to the federal government as well. And it's just we have gone so far beyond the pale on this that it's almost incomprehensible.
Okay, so you're right. We don't know if we can get any record expunged. We're told that we cannot get records expunged. And you're saying if they decide that he had a question from the test, or if they decide to label him a cheater, that's going to be on his record for scholarships, for work placement, for whatever opportunities he may or may not have in the future.
It very well could. We don't know. Maybe none of that will happen. I don't know. But the point is that it could happen. There don't seem to be any controls in place or any restrictions on what these companies and these testing consortia are doing with our children's information.
Ryan, do you have that clip right now of Peg Luksick that we could play? Jane, you're familiar with Peg Luksick, Dr. Peg Luksick?
Yes, definitely.
Do you have it cued, Ryan? The video? In her video, and I will post that on the Stop Common Core Iowa page. Folks, if you want this information, Jane's articles, I've already put the link on the Iowa Stop Common Core Iowa page. It's the orange profile picture. It says Stopping Common Core in Iowa. And I will also put the link up there for Peg. Peg at 4 minutes and 7 seconds says, once you sign that MOU, you no longer have control. You no longer can opt out. We're talking about opt out in the next segment. You can opt out right now, but once the schools sign that MOU, Jane, we don't believe they can opt out. Is that true?
That would depend on what the specific the school MOU says, and I'm really not sure about that. What I know is that there can be no federal penalty for opting out. I don't know about state because that would depend on your own state law, but I would be very concerned about anything that a school or a state agency is signing with, whether it's a testing consortium or whether it's the U.S. government, because I would think that they will do whatever they can to put in the MOU restrictions on opting out. So the schools need to be real careful about this.
In Iowa right now, we're dealing with a Department of Education that says that that's not an option, and then it says further that the state is not capable of making such decisions, and it goes back to local control. All of a sudden, we like local control when we want to throw excuses for why something can't be done. And then it says something about the local district will have to decide whether to or whether not, and what the criteria are and when it's okay. So there's really no set policy. It's really vague. You know what that means. Court case down the road, more money for the taxpayers to have to decide bad law in the court with an activist judge.
Yes, that's exactly right. The problem here is that no one in the high corridors of power ever anticipated this. They thought that parents would just go along with it because parents have always gone along with it. For 50 years, we've had all these federal mandates, and you must do this and you must do that. And the states have gone along like sheep, and the parents really weren't awakened to it. Well, now parents are, and they've said, we don't want to be sheep. We want to take back control over what's happening with our children. And so, no, my child is not going to take this test. And so it's caught them off guard. They don't really know what to do about that. So a lot of states don't have policies. Some of them are scrambling to come up with a policy, but most of them, I think, like Iowa, are just kind of, stumbling from one point to the next to try to decide what to do about it.
They do, until they hit a mom like Michelle Crystal, who's dug into this, and she's gone and figured it out, and she's gone to the United opt-out and gotten the form, and she's gone to the Hatch Amendment and gotten her paperwork as to why she can, and she's now educating superintendents as to why parents at this point can opt out. But I do have concerns about once that MOU is signed, I think that what Dr. Luxick is saying is that the schools will no longer have control of that information. The state will no longer have control. Whatever data, and Jane, this is not just personal, this is not just academic data. We're going to talk with our next guest about all the things that they're wanting and inquiring about. But so, as you're saying, here's somebody in a foreign country has information on our students, personal information, family lifestyles, histories, medical treatments. That data is not, it's bad enough that it's being moved. We have in Iowa, they're telling us that the Department of Ed won't give it to the federal Department of Ed. No, they won't. But I think the MOU, according to one of our volunteer researchers, Heather, who does a great job, says that it will go to the Department of Labor. Even worse.
Well, the MOU that the testing consortium has signed with the U.S. Department of Education says that all data collected through the test, connected with the test, shall be made available to the U.S. Department of Education on an ongoing basis for undefined research. So the fact that your Department of Education says, oh, we don't give it to them, well, maybe not, but the MOU says that you have to, if they ask for it, maybe they haven't asked for it yet. They probably haven't, because they're not going to do anything outrageous yet. They're going to try to wait until all of this dies down. But at some point down the road, if they ask for it, the contract is there. You have to let them look at it. So there's a big difference between we don't give data to the federal government or to the Department of Labor or to anybody else, and we can't give it. And that's why state legislation is so important, to keep them from giving it to these other agencies, because when push comes to shove and federal money's on the line, just about every state Department of Education is going to roll over and give them whatever they want.
That's right. And even if it's our Department of Ed saying we're not going to give it away, if it goes to the consortium, that's a private entity, and we don't know, nor do we have any control over who they will give it to.
That's exactly right, because you have one vote. You've given up your sovereignty on that. You have one vote, and if you get outvoted, or even if they just do things internally without really letting the states vote, then that's too bad. You've lost all power. And
our memorandum of understanding, we supposedly is been nullified because our governor signed an executive order pulling us out as a governing state here in Iowa. But the task force that we're going to go hear again today, the vendors will be there giving their presentation to the education committees in both the House and the Senate. If we go back into that smarter balance, you can't just take the test. You have to be a governing member. You can't just even be an affiliate. I think you have to be a governing member. We'll talk about that another time with all the cost. There's a membership fee beyond the cost of the assessments that are much more than what we're paying now with the Iowa assessments. If we do that, then a new MOU comes in, and who knows what that's going to say. We've got our research folks looking into it. Jane, you say that Pearson violated its own contract with Park by tracking Bill down, this student, down through social media. And I had read that that the consortiums will violate their own privacy policies because, I don't know if it's the MOU or what it is that overrides it.
The privacy policies sound really good. They didn't have these privacy policies to start with. They put them in once there was national parental outrage over the potential threats to privacy here. So they put these policies in, but they sound good, but they're meaningless. As long as the consortia have that MOU with the U.S. Department of Education, that controls, regardless of what they say on their own. Oh, we won't give this and we won't give that. Well, you will if the U.S. Department asks for it, because the MOU requires you to give it to them.
So it's not just the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding that the consortium has with the state. The consortium has an MOU with the federal level as well, and we don't have control, nor do we know what that says. You're doing business with a third party, and you have no idea what they're doing. It's like that cheating spouse. You think you have a contract with them, but you have no idea what they're out doing and who else they're with.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. The federal government is they are determined to get their hooks into student data, and they are also determined to do everything they can to incentivize the states to share the data widely, and especially with departments of labor, because the Common Core is not designed for education. It is designed for workforce development. And once you understand that, then you see why they're wanting to share all of this data with departments of labor, because the only thing they're trying to do is train kids to fill entry-level jobs at politically protected companies. That's what they're doing. So, of course, the departments of labor need to have the education information from the departments of education so that they can track these kids and make sure that they're turning out enough little widgets to fill these slots at the politically favored companies.
And we're running out of time here, but what would you say to the parent who has this attitude? Well, the government already has all that information about us anyway.
I've heard that before. I think that is a dangerously defeatist attitude. The reason they have it is that nobody was paying attention before. But now that people are paying attention, I think that it is very possible and, in fact, probable that parents will take back control over this. There will be some good legislation on the federal level that prevents this kind of thing, but it won't happen if all parents say, oh, well, there's nothing we can do. That is the attitude that's gotten us where we are so far, and if we don't start changing it now, it'll be a whole lot harder or impossible 10 years from now.
Next week, I am interviewing someone who's interviewed several survivors of the Holocaust because they just never dreamt it could happen to them. And you're right, Jane, it's our own negligence that's caused this to happen. What would you say to parents? And by the way, Jane, we have a broadband bill coming through our state legislature. You warned our committees of that last session when you were here, that if we tried this technology and the online test, we would definitely need more broadband width, and they deny that has anything to do with the schools. I don't buy it. I may be dead wrong, but I don't buy it. I just think it's ironic that you said it would happen, and here it is. And so that's just a side note, a warning to everybody out there. Jane has said that this will come, this expense will come, and here it is. But Jane, what would you say to our listeners, viewers, about this issue, the MOU, the privacy? What's the action step they need to take?
The action step is to get in touch with their legislators, with your governor, with your state school superintendent, and don't shut up about it. Call, go down to the Capitol if you can, talk to people, do the research. You've mentioned several women who are doing the research. Parents can be a great resource for these legislators. But one thing we've learned is that a lot of legislators don't really care what the facts are. What they care about is whether they're going to lose their seat over it. And so there has to be mobilizing. There has been in a lot of states, and Iowa has got a lot of good people on the ground. You just have to keep making noise about it and keep just telling the truth over and over again, and don't give up. It requires eternal vigilance, but nobody is better equipped to do that than a parent who is concerned about his child.
Jane Robbins, thank you for taking time out to drop by and inform our listeners. Thank you for the work that you do, the writing, and keeping the rest of us aware and ready and able to take action.
Thank you, Tamara.
Jane Robbins with American Principles Project has been my guest. Coming back after the break, we'll be with Lisa Hudson, who is from Arizona, the attorney who gave great testimony, and I'll put that link I should be putting it on the Truth for Our Time, the show Facebook page, but I'm just putting it on the Stop Common Core Facebook page because of the topic, I guess. I'll try and put it on both of them. And if you haven't liked those pages, please do. The Stop Common Core page is the orange profile, Stopping Common Core in Iowa. The other one is Truth for Our Time, Truth for Our Time. And I mentioned these books. The author will be with me next week. We're talking about Deb Bowen, who has helped, actually the author are a bunch of students, young students who are writing about Holocaust survivors, meeting, telling their story. It's a great idea. But here's what happens when you don't pay attention. When you think your government, it's okay that they tell you what you can and can't do, when they monitor your use on the internet, when they tell you what position and vocation you can have. That was done before. It's not new. Ecclesiastes says there's nothing new under the sun. So we'll be right back to these messages. Stay tuned, and we'll thank our sponsors when we come right back.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Homs.
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Everything that we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed, fixed rate or it's free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money-back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fixing the problem today. If they have another problem 5 days down the road, it's still fixed rate or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, oh, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that night. You shouldn't have to pay more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. You'll get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I love the team. I love the people that I work with.
We have fun, but we work hard.
I call them my ambassadors of legendary service. If you could just envision what that is, that's who we're sending to your home.
They literally will call in, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I want to talk to your manager. And I get on the phone, they're like, that technician that was at my house was the greatest technician ever. That's cool to me.
We want to brighten people's days.
Every person that we have going into the house has gone through an extensive background check.
Drug testing, we have a very thorough interview process that 1 out of 140 people make it through.
If we promise you something, that's what you're going to get, no matter what.
We're here when you need us to protect the safety and comfort of your family.
If you're not happy, we're gonna make it right.
If we're willing to put 100% money-back guarantee on what we do, what type of work do you think we do?
Give us a call. We're there for you 24/7, 365 days a year.
Enough said.
And thank you for staying tuned. We want to thank our sponsors, Christians for America, Crave, Christians for America. We appreciate them coming alongside and making it a possibility for us to bring this show to you each week. We also thank Webcast One Live Studio for letting us air out of the studio and do the show each week. Jane Robbins was my guest that just was with us the last segment. Joining us now is Lisa Hudson. Lisa gave testimony in the hearing for the Education Committee, I believe in the Senate in Arizona. Lisa, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Tamara. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
And I've got to find that link, and I will put it on our Stop Common Core Iowa page, also the Truth for Our Time page, so people can find it. That hearing took place when?
That was the 19th, so last week, Thursday.
And actually, who was the Madam Chair, the chairwoman?
Senator Kelly Ward,
yeah.
Who is an absolutely wonderful patriot. I mean, truly has a heart for people and our Constitution, and really, really great woman. In fact, she is kind of dabbling in the idea of running against Senator McCain in the next election. So I would be a big supporter of that. But true patriot.
I met...
Very, very engaged woman.
And she's a doctor as well?
She is. And her husband is also a doctor, I think. But, yeah, very beyond the medical realm, she is extremely knowledgeable about state rights and local governments and trying to keep control with us as opposed to the federal government. So really great candidate in terms of running for the U.S. Senate. Keep your eye on her. She's really kind of a leader in that.
So did we just have a scoop on this show? Did we just break news on this show? I met her at the Glenn Beck Studios in 2013, I think. And she just is phenomenal. You're absolutely right. And I would be delighted to see her run. Absolutely delighted. Mm-hmm. So this hearing, I was listening for the 5th grade boy that everybody's talking about. It is the same video. If you've all heard about that, then you already have the link where you can see Lisa. I was listening for the 5th grade boy, and I had it playing while I was doing other things. You came on, and you caught my attention. You knew what you were talking about. You understood Common Core.
Right.
You were warning. Go ahead.
I've spent probably far too many hours, as my husband would say, obsessing about this, but a situation worth obsessing over, I think, in my opinion.
You are an attorney by trade or vocation by training and a mother by grace, as you say it.
Mm-hmm.
And you were warning, if I can get my notes here, that they would want central control. There would be no protection, and you mentioned a breach of 8.5 million students in the last 5 years.
Yeah, and I wish I had that study. That was one of the many things. I mean, if I had printed out every single study and piece of information I've read, I could fill 2 rooms. But to give you specifics, I cannot recall who did the study. I found it in the what was open comments when the government was intending to make the changes to FERPA. And it was an open comment from someone who was opposed to the changes, obviously, and they had done studies about data breaches. And it was a period of time, I think maybe 4 or 5 years, that they indicated that there were 8.5 million breaches of student data in that time.
When we say student data, we're talking about the data that the school has on them. You're talking grades, you're talking everything the school has on them?
Correct. Yeah, that was my understanding from the report, is that it would be anything that the school, any information they had collected about that student, Social Security numbers, I'm assuming, would be in there, a home address, phone number, and grades, absences. I don't know if at that point test scores were included in there, but anything that they had collected at that point would have been accessible to other people if it was hacked into.
And so let's tell our listeners why this is such an issue. You warned as well what they would be looking for on these tests. It isn't just how they do in math or science. What's some of the information they will be collecting or they have collected already?
Well, I found an interesting study by the Fordham Center on Law and Information Policy. I think the study was done in 2009. I have a lot of notes here in front of me, but I believe that was 2009. And Fordham had done a review of state data collection of all K-12 students in all 50 states. And they indicated that the data collected, and this is a short list, but it kind of is indicative of what they're collecting and no reason why, but simply what they're collecting. And it said the data collected included but was not limited to pregnancy, mental health, criminal history, birth order, peer violence, parental education, and your economic status, medical test results, and birth weight, that was the one I thought, why they want to know these things, I have no idea. Birth weight was certainly kind of an obscure thing to want to know, but what they would do with that, I don't know, and what it would mean to them, I have no idea, as probably 99% of voters and parents and would have no idea either. So there's a vast amount of information, and this was clearly, Tamara, this was just a small sample of the information that Fordham indicated was being collected. So they also found as well that the data was not terribly well protected. So there are definitely concerns about who has access to the information, whether it's properly protected or not. And really, go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry. Well, I was going to say, for the Iowans listening, we're talking about this because right now our legislature has a task force that has come back with their results highly recommending Smarter Balance over the other consortium. I think they only looked at 2. Who says these are the best 2 to begin with? They only looked at 2. The other one was the Next Generation Iowa standards or Iowa test that I think used to be from the same group as what we called the Iowa Basic Skills. All I can say to you listeners is we do not want Smarter Balance. We do not want Smarter Balance testing consortium. We need to stay with the Iowan, the local one, where we can have some control. We'll still have to have questions that go along with the Common Core as long as we're in the Common Core, which is why we need out of the Common Core. But we could at least have some control of what is being asked. And as Jane was saying before, we have no control of that information once they have it. The key is that they shouldn't get it. We need to be passing laws here that they can't collect data that has nothing to do with academics. And then remember, the Memorandum of Understanding overrides laws. Our old Memorandum of Understanding said that we would remove any barriers, laws, regulations, or statutes that inhibited information they wanted. So
correct. Yeah, and I think along those same lines, I mean, a lot of people think, oh, this is protected. The government has taken steps to protect us. The states, and here in Arizona, people say, well, they can't get it. It's protected by statute, but it really isn't. I mean, ultimately, that what would protect kids is FERPA, and in 2011, President Obama very quietly, very kind of stealthily, as we like to say, with a lot of the things that happened through this administration, kind of in the dark of night, changed FERPA, basically gutted it of any student protection that a family, a parent, a student, K through 12 student, and beyond, actually, because the longitudinal data systems have been extended from pre-K to post-grad. So they're collecting, at this point, cradle to career. And I think the goal is well beyond that. I think Mark Tucker says cradle to grave. But the statute was very quietly gutted by Obama. So now they can collect anything and provide that information to non-consensually. They do not have to have parental consent to anyone who they have dealings with. They can send it to contractors. They can send it to consultants, which I'm sure then rolls into that ball of who can have it. The test writers, the standards writers, they all have access to that information. And I think the list of qualified individuals also included school volunteers. I mean, that's how broad it is.
Yeah, volunteers, but also the Department of Defense. Right,
correct, and the Department of Labor.
So it is a school to work. It's a school to labor. It's a school to. They're deciding who will go on the front lines, who will be
correct,
who will be deemed worthy of what position. It's just flat out frightening. The late bloomers will never have a chance. The Einsteins, the P. Buckley Moss, who Colonel Sanders with his Kentucky Fried Chicken doing it as a senior citizen. These people will never have a chance.
No, they really weren't. They really won't. And that, kind of not to interrupt that thought, but in terms of the cradle to, career,
mm-hmm.
I'm sure you're probably familiar with the Mark Tucker Dear Hillary letter.
Right.
Back in, I think, 1992. He wrote that after Bill Clinton was elected. And if any, I try to tell people about this letter, and nobody has any idea what it is. If you haven't done the investigation, if you're not interested in all in education policy, it flies right under your radar. But if you read that letter, it is so prophetic as to what's happening in education today, and this extremely sweeping, probably the most sweeping change in education policy we've seen in American history. But if you read that letter, it's eerily similar to what is going on today. And Mark Tucker was involved in some aspect. I haven't quite linked him how to the creation of these standards. And so it's very, it's get rid of local control. I think there was something he said about some things have to be sacrificed. And in this instance, it's local control.
And it's
so
parental
that they can
control.
track from.
It's not just local, it's
exactly.
parental.
Take the parents out of the equation.
And FERPA, for our listeners and viewers who may not know, FERPA is Federal Rights to Privacy Act, Federal Education Rights to Privacy Act.
Right.
And then let's also go back. I want to hit on several things. Let's go back to the H.R. 5, and that's a federal level bill. And I know we're kind of taking a jump here, but I'm watching the clock as well. That bill we pulled, it didn't go through, but you were telling me how dangerous it would be if it had been signed.
Right, and I think, that bill is very, very long. It's one of those things I think that a lot of people think, oh, pass it. It's kind of like Obamacare, let's pass it and then find out what's in it. We don't want to do that. It's not nearly that long, but it's still 600 pages of legislative language. I have not been through the entire bill, but there is, to me, one of the most alarming sections was, and I find the section for you here, if I have it right in front of me. It's subpart 4 of the bill, section 6561, which basically is kind of written in terms of, here's how we're going to return local control to parents and school districts and states. And it gives all these, information about how you're going to get the authority back. Yet it still includes in it, language regarding express waiver of state rights, which should send the hair on your neck up no matter when you hear that. But it involves, basically they say if this program has been ratified or approved in a budget, which every state, I'm virtually certain, has probably ratified this in a budget in terms of where the money came from and where it's going. So if there's a signed budget, which I'm certain that our former governor, Jan Brewer, did. In fact, our current budget includes line items for the longitudinal data system and other Common Core related items. But once it's been ratified in the state budget, there is no opt-out. So you waive the state's rights and authorities to act inconsistently with anything that the government says, hey, you've already agreed to do this for us, and you ratified it in your budget, so you can't get out of it. So I'm very concerned about that language and how that will hold up and if it will pass with that language in it. At that point, Common Core is law. And the only way you can get out of it is via an act of Congress, which we all know is a very difficult body to move.
Yes, that would be true. And at the same time, I hear you say that, and I think, we don't pay attention to the laws. We don't pay attention to the Constitution. So maybe it won't mean anything after all. The problem is that when we get somebody in who doesn't agree with it, they are God-fearing and they do pay attention to the laws, and so they will try and go about it the proper way. And it's so much harder for us to undo things because we are usually on the right side of things, trying to do them properly. And so it's so much more frustrating than an executive who just doesn't uphold the laws he doesn't like somebody we have in there right now. Very frustrating. All right, so we've covered most of this. You're saying opt out. It is a 14th Amendment, a 10th Amendment principle. You have the right to opt your kids out.
Right. My belief is you have the right. The Constitution, and I know that the federal government has kind of gotten around this in terms of the 10th Amendment because they're saying, well, these aren't our standards. They've been very savvy in enlisting these third parties and other deep pockets to fund this. But ultimately, it comes down to the federal government, because if your kid doesn't score how the federal government wants him or her to score on the test, the federal government will say to the test writers and the standard writers, change these. So the federal government has control. The state constitutions, I can only really speak to Arizona and what our legislation says. We have legislation here that addresses absolutely nothing about state testing and national testing being mandatory, although people here are being told they can't opt out. But the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment acknowledges a fundamental constitutional right of a parent to direct and determine the care, teaching, and education of their children. And if this isn't the care, teaching, and education of our children, I don't know what is.
Right. All right, Lisa Hudson has been my guest. Action. What should people do out there? Right now in Iowa, you need to call your legislators, 515-281-3221 in the House, 515-281-3711 in the Senate. Look up on the legis.iowa.gov, legis.iowa.gov. Go to committees and look for education committees and get the name of every education committee member, or just go to Stop Common Core Iowa Facebook page, and I've already got a post there with all of them listed. Then send them an email that says, we do not want Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium. Do not accept it. Even the legislators who are pro-Common Core are saying we're not ready, this is not right, there's issues, and they're saying we should have a delay. So please go and do that. Lisa, your call to action.
My call to action is basically the same. Jump up and down, no matter how crazy people think you are. Jump up and down and make as much noise as you can. To just kind of parrot what you said, call your legislators, call, email, tweet them on Twitter, because there's nothing more exasperating to them to putting something out on social media so that a lot of other people can see it. Call them. Let your voice be heard. Send emails. Discuss it with your legislators. Discuss it with your House reps, your senators, and let them know as well, because I think a lot of people are kind of oblivious to how H.R. 5 plays into all of this. I know very briefly we haven't touched on it, but the Title I waiver, the NCLB waivers that every state took, basically, the Title I issues with that is reducing the 40% free and reduced lunch to zero, so that now every kid in a public school is Title I eligible. And so with H.R. 5, we have a Title I portability provision if it passes, and that child can take, now they move that Title I money with them. It doesn't stay with the school. It goes with them. And so if they go to a private or Christian school, they can now take with them the umbrella of the federal government. So if that would require a private or Christian school to comply with every mandate the federal government has under Common Core. And I think that, and what we know will happen when the federal government gets a hold of private and Christian education is not a pretty picture. So stomp up and down. I said, I am a mama bear with this. I will not let the federal government have control of my child. And I would go down in a hail of gunfire before I laid down and let them take her from me. So that sounds very conspiracy theorist, but it really isn't. People have got to know what's going on.
Well, I was one of those they always warned, don't say that. It sounds like tinfoil hat. Don't talk about that. And now that others are writing about it and we're seeing about it, now they're not telling me to be quiet anymore. Lisa Hudson.
They decide that you're not as crazy as they thought you were.
How about that? They just think I'm crazy about something else I'm warning about that they haven't heard yet.
Right,
right. So, thank you so much for joining us. We will, hopefully you can stop in again, keep doing the good work, and I will put the link up of the testimony. You can hear her. She's about at the 1:20-minute mark, the hour 20-minute in, and the fifth graders after that at about 1:40. So I'll get that up online for you shortly. I've got the link to calling your legislators. That's up there again, so you can see that on Stop Common Core, and I've also got it on Truth for Our Time. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Tamara. I really appreciate the time.
We'll go right to a message of our sponsors. We'll be right back with Kurt Liske with the Iowa Firearms Coalition.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can give these grandkids back, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We can help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hey. Psst. Let me let you in on a little secret. You ready? Always try to do business with people, not places. Especially if you seek honest Christian business people. And when it comes to my car, I really need to trust who's working on it. Now, my family is so blessed. A few years ago, we found a family-owned automobile repair shop that operates as a Christian business also. Open, honest, reliable, trustworthy. It's AMCO on Hickman Road in front of Kmart, and it's a family-owned Christian operating business. This family treats your car as if it was their car. Everything from oil changes to transmission repair and everything in between. So the next time you feel the need to be at peace with your choice of who you can trust with your car, give AMCO on Hickman a chance to serve you. And tell them Max sent you.
It's a fast-paced show today, and when you get done listening, you'll be better for it. You'll have information, and you might be a little bit frustrated, but you know what will help you with that frustration? When you pass it along to those who deserve it, who are making the decisions and need to know how you feel. So those numbers are on the Stop Common Core in Iowa Facebook page. The emails are there as well. The committee members are all listed for you. So do your parental duty, do your citizenry duty, and make sure, one, you just economically, fiscally, the Smarter Balance is too expensive. It's much more expensive than the other testing opportunities and alternatives. So there it is for you. We saw Jane tell us earlier, we're in this position because we haven't done enough. Now's your chance to do something. Joining me now, Iowa Firearms Coalition Vice President and Marketing. Head of is he Vice President of Marketing? Is that, because I hear you giggling over there, Kurt. It said Vice President -Marketing. So I'm not exactly sure what that means.
Yeah, it's I wear many hats. We'll put it that way. But just to put it simply, I'm the vice president. I'm not a guy that gets too caught up in titles, but if we want to label it, I'm the vice president of the Iowa Firearms Coalition. Have you listened to any of this show so far? Are you just jumping in? I got a couple minutes ago the tail end of the Common Core segment you just wrapped up, and it's funny we talk about what's good for our families and things of that nature, and in a strange way, the bill that we're working on kind of dovetails a little bit with that. So, I think so. That's why I ask. I think it absolutely does. It's about your privacy. It's about your ability to decide what you want for your family and your sovereignty. Yeah. So, real briefly, the bill that we're talking about is Senate File 425, and it's been called by some as the omnibus gun bill. Real briefly, what it does is it actually addresses a number of issues, a great number of issues, really, within the state of Iowa. This bill is a culmination of a number of groups coming together. There's us from the firearms community. There's the law enforcement. A number of law enforcement agencies partnered with us on this, and a number of legislators all came together and said, okay, you know what? We each have issues we'd like to address. Here's what we can bring to the table. And that's how we ended up with this bill that is now Senate File 425. And within the bill, there are a number of different provisions. And I don't know if you want me to kind of spell some of them out or if you had specific questions, but I'd be happy to go any direction you like. Well, it says all the Republicans and a good chunk of Democrats in the Iowa House have moved to make changes. Now, this article I'm just seeing, and it's posted on your Facebook page, I don't think it's real favorable towards your bill. Are you aware of this article? Is this the Ames, the Iowa State paper? Probably. Okay. I just saw it a little bit ago, and I haven't had a chance to read it yet. Just seeing some of the feedback from some of my colleagues, they're not overly impressed. I guess having not seen it, it's impossible for me to comment specifically on that. But what I can tell you is that there's been a lot of misinformation being spread around, and which is always unfortunate, but at the same time, it's also not unexpected either. Well, let me ask you about the one I heard, and this one does kind of concern me. If it does away with a permit to purchase, that someone will have to go through a background check more often? Yes. So the way handgun purchases in Iowa work right now is if I wanted to make a handgun purchase, I would have to go to my sheriff in my county and get a permit to purchase. The process, they do a background check, and then I get a little card that says I'm okay to, I passed the background check and move forward. What that does then is that authorizes me to purchase as many handguns as I want over the course of the next 12 months. And what our opposition is saying is that, well, this bill would do away with that, and it would lead to less background checks. Well, realistically, if you do away with this and make that optional, whereas I would not have to use that permit to purchase, I would then have to go through a background check for every single time I went in to purchase a firearm. So in reality, this is another case of our opposition playing fast and loose with the facts. Now, I have to say I'm surprised. On their part or if it's willful, but it really matters not. The fact is it's not what would happen. I'm surprised that a gun group would be okay with more background checks. Well, this isn't. How do I put this nicely? We're all for responsibility, and we believe that Iowans are, on the whole, responsible people, and we don't think that we should legislate towards a tiny minority. So we'll put it that way. There are hundreds and thousands of people walking around the state of Iowa with a permit to carry, and when we got that law updated 5 years ago, we were told that there would be blood in the streets and OK Corral style shootouts on a daily basis, and we're hearing that again with this bill, and we can just point back to that and say, you know what, Iowans are good people, and if this is already happening around you, you really have no reason to be alarmed. So
I wish I had the article out of Florida. A county sheriff didn't force his folks to go through gun training, but he offered it to his community. Several of them got guns, and burglary rates went down in that county, but they went up in surrounding counties. So it's something to be said when you can protect yourself, and people know that you protect yourself.
Correct. It's we always like to say that it's not that we want everybody to have a gun; it's that we want people to have the choice to have a gun, and that's what's important. That's a big thing for me is having the freedom to choose and not have somebody else dictate. Whether it's a governmental agency or somebody else dictate what I can and cannot do. So to me, that's a big aspect of this. The self-defense portion of it, you touched on it. When people are able to defend themselves, word gets out. And, a lot of times we see crime rates drop. So I'm not familiar with the exact example you've listed, but it's something that's played out throughout the country, and I'm not too surprised to hear it.
If I was at the Capitol one day last week, and I saw several mamas up there with their strollers pushing their babies around. And so I walked over and I asked, what are you lobbying for? Because they had the gun T-shirts on. What are you lobbying for? Well, several of them didn't know. Several of them had to point to something on a sheet. And even after they pointed to a bill number on a sheet, they couldn't explain to me what it was. Who were those women?
Well, those were some women that were within a group known as Moms Demand Action. And what they happen to be is a group that is funded by out-of-state money that happens to come primarily from a billionaire, one percenter, Michael Bloomberg. And, they seem to think that more gun control is the answer to all of our problems, that more laws, equate to more safety. Well, the fact is we know that criminals don't follow laws. That's the definition of a criminal. We obviously disagree. And, they were there trying to plead their case. We think we have a stronger case. And, we'll see where the cards fall at the end of the session. Right now, this bill, Senate File 425, which they were working against on that day, it's already passed a number of votes, 5 votes between the House and the Senate. We're literally waiting on a vote for a vote in the full Senate, and if it passes, which we believe it will, it would go to the governor's desk, and we believe the governor would sign it. So this bill it's already passed by a landslide in a number of different votes. We just want to see it brought to a vote. We want to see it given a fair chance in the full Senate, and right now we're just waiting on Senate leadership to listen to the people of Iowa, listen to law enforcement, listen to even their own members within the Senate, and say, bring this bill to a vote without amendment in its original form, without any changes to its content.
Because the article that is not even helpful to you admits that Republicans and a good chunk of Democrats agree.
Yeah, and that's what, honestly, that's what keeps me up at night, is the fact that this is the legislative process is working. Like, we have seen this bill collect support from Republicans and Democrats on both sides of the aisle in great numbers, and to see the games that are being played are extremely frustrating because we would like to think that the legislative process works in our country, despite some indications that perhaps the gridlock at the national level. But I'd like to think here in Iowa that we do things the right way. But to see the games that are being played is extremely frustrating, and I really hope that the Iowa leadership in the Iowa Senate recognizes the fact that the state of Iowa law enforcement, everybody wants to see this bill brought to a vote.
So your bill is
See what
being
the people say.
Gronstalled. Your bill is being Gronstalled. It's the term we're going to give it. It's Gronstalled. And so,
we would, yeah, I mean, that's the reality of the situation. And, you know, in a perfect world, it would come to a vote, and, you know, there's still time for that to happen.
now here's what I'm going to say to you.
Sure.
Bill aside, like the bill or not, he's one person, and yes, he's the leader of the Senate, but there are how many other Democrats in the Senate? 25? Don't they have a 26, 24 hold? Yeah. So there are 25
others, yes.
So there are 25 others. So don't let it all land at his feet. Sure, let's blame him because he's trying to stall things and being a stopgate. And frankly, we wish we had that same thing in the House on bad bills that we didn't like. But there are 25 other Democrats that need to put heat on their leadership and make things happen. So it doesn't just stop at one person's desk.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we're a nonpartisan organization. We'll work with anybody. You know, it's our goal to advance and protect the Second Amendment rights of all Iowans.
So quickly,
and, you know, we're happy to work with Republicans. We're happy to work with Democrats because we believe in this. You know, we're all volunteer. This is the way things are supposed to be done. You know, I mean, this is a true grassroots movement. And, you know, to hear that Senate leadership is gone soft on a bill that has basically sailed through with, like I said, a landslide of votes on every previous time it's been brought to the floor is extremely frustrating. And we're hopeful that the rest of the caucus there in the Senate hears that message and, like you said, puts a little pressure on and does their part to move this forward as well.
So do you have an action item for folks?
Yeah, so we actually, I have to hand it to our members. They've done a great job of getting the message out about this bill. It's been phenomenal seeing them rally to this. We actually have an email campaign set up that we had to turn off because the email client contacted us and said, you know, we're afraid you're going to shut down the servers. We've just been hammering the legislature on emails. So what we're doing is we're referring our members to call the Senate switchboard, send a message, be polite, be respectful, but send a message to the Senate leadership. So that'd be Mr. Gronstall, the Senate President, Ms. Yoakum, and the bill's sponsor, Steve Sodders. They're out of Marshall County, and ask them to bring this bill to a vote in its current form. Just real respectfully, you know, Senate 425, we'd like to see it brought to a vote. Senate switchboard, I don't know if you want to get into it, but I've got the number here.
515-281-3711.
Yes.
All right.
So, yeah.
Okay.
You've done this before, as I can tell.
All right.
But,
my guest has been Kurt Liske. He's with the Iowa Firearms Coalition. You can check him out on Facebook. They have a website, too. We are out of time. Kurt, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for your support, and thanks for having me on.
You've been given a lot of information that will help you live as a free American, and only you can hold on to your liberty. So take this opportunity and do something with the information you've learned. Be encouraged and never be complacent. Thanks for joining us.